This is a WGNS Action Line. Talking with Rutherford County newsmakers
since 1947.
This is a WGNS Action Line. Now, your host, Scott Walker.
With us in studio, Rebecca Oldham, Assistant Professor in the Human Development and Family Science Program within MTSU's Human Sciences Department. How are you this morning?
I'm doing great, Scott. Thanks for having me today.
Yeah, and you brought with you the sunshine. That's nice.
I sure did. That's what I do.
So what all is going on at MTSU within your department and what's coming up?
Today, I'm here to let the public know about a series of events that I'm putting on. I've done it for the past few years, and it's really 3 different events that are all focused on different types of family violence. There are actually Q&A panels with different professionals from across the state. Lots of different types of professionals. The first panel is on March 26th. It's about child abuse. The second panel is on April 9th. It's about intimate partner violence, commonly known as domestic violence, sexual assault, and stalking. And then third panel is on April the 16th, and it's about elder abuse. And the panels are a fantastic opportunity for people in the community, one, to come to get to know the different service providers that are available in our area, how they work together, but more importantly, what they can do in their families, in their communities to help prevent these kinds of violence and abuse from happening, as well as what they can do to intervene if they do suspect something might be going on.
It seems like child abuse and child sex abuse, along with domestic violence, they're so prevalent right now and have been for a very long time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, this is something that goes back a long time, right? It's part of being human in some ways. But there's a lot of things that we can do, that we can advocate for in terms of policy, that we can advocate in terms of individuals to help reduce and prevent some of those kinds of violence from happening. But a lot of the things that we need to do, people don't necessarily know how to respond in those instances. Like in my field, we focus a lot on prevention and education. Just knowing about what to do in those situations. If you're a business owner, having policies in place to help protect the people who work at your business can go a long way to making sure those kinds of violence don't happen in the first place.
When you look back over history, and I don't know if it's just me, but it does seem like pre-1980, less of that was reported. And I'm guessing it's because it was swept under the rug. I don't think there was less of it happening.
No, I mean, I think if anything, some of these things are happening less over time as the public becomes more aware, as our attitudes change. In fact, for example, a lot of laws about intimate partner violence and sexual assault in marriage have actually become more stringent over time, and we still have more work to do there. So in many ways, things have gotten better over time, but, you know, any instance of violence is one too many.
So the first event, March 26th, that one is going to focus on child abuse mainly.
That's right. And we have really exciting panelists. I have a police detective who had served on MPD, who has helped found their special victims unit several years ago. He'll be on all 3 of the panels. He's investigated over 1,000 different cases of various types of violence and abuse. I also have lawyers on 2 different panels, including the child abuse and elder abuse one. I have a very exciting guest who is coming all the way from Memphis. She's a pediatrician with special training in child abuse, which is something that not many pediatricians have. So she'll be on the child abuse panel. We also have different advocates in our community. So if you suspect, for example, a child in your life might have experienced some kind of abuse, sexual or otherwise, you can take them to a place called the Child Advocacy Center, where there's a person specially trained called a forensic interviewer to ask them questions about what might have happened in a way that is admissible in court. And so they work really closely with police departments to make sure that those cases are handled in ways that justice can be served. And that's part of prevention, right? To make sure that there's deterrence for people, is to make sure the justice system is working properly. So we have a forensic interviewer and a program director with the Child Advocacy Center in Franklin who's going to be on that panel as well. On our intimate partner violence panel, we have the same detective, but we also have our local domestic violence center director who will be on that. We have people who are involved in policy and prevention work who will be on that panel, who are coming from Nashville to sit on that. On our elder abuse panel, again, we have our police detective. We have someone from Adult Protective Services who experiences a lot of these these cases. We have a lawyer who has helped in many different areas of elder abuse. We have a financial advisor because economic abuse and exploitation is really, really common with elder abuse. So we needed a special person for that. So we have just so many different types of people. We have therapists, play therapists who work a lot with children who have experienced abuse. And every year, I've done this panel 3 or 4 years now. Every year I learn something new from our panelists because they're seeing how these things change with technology and how exploitation can happen in new and various forms. And they have a lot of really great practical suggestions for family members, for service providers, for teachers about what they can do to identify that violence, prevent it, and know how to handle it appropriately.
And when you look at the different types of abuse out there, I mean, from domestic violence to child abuse, elder abuse, what categories seem to have the highest rate of reporting, or what categories do you see the highest number of cases in?
Oh, that's a good question. I'm not great at remembering numbers off the top of my head. And I think with underreporting being a prevalent issue, it's pretty hard to say. I will say, though, elder abuse is one of the most underreported types of violence that we see because all of these kinds of violence often happen with people who are trusted. Family members, friends, coaches, ministers, people in our lives that do have our trust and therefore have access. And because of those interpersonal relationships, they often go underreported because they don't want to get that person in trouble. They don't want to get dad in trouble. They don't want to get their granddaughter in trouble. And so with elder abuse, we see that quite a bit. It's their spouse that's abusing them. It's their granddaughter who has, taken their money and spent all of it, and they don't want to get that loved one in trouble.
And then with that, I'm sure you have caregivers out there, and then you have the patient who may have dementia or Alzheimer's.
That's right.
So that probably adds and complicates to the problem.
Absolutely. With elder abuse, we see that people who have a dementia are at higher risks of being targets because people know that they can be exploited and that people won't believe them. We see that across different types of abuse, though, that people who have any kind of disability are much more likely to be victimized. I think the rate is like 12 times the amount for people who have a disability, which is one reason, thanks to the College of Behavioral and Health Sciences, I'm able to bring in an ASL interpreter. So anybody who is hard of hearing or who is deaf, we're going to have that at each one. I'm going to work as hard as I can to make sure that people who are joining us virtually can pin the ASL interpreter, in addition to having the automated captions, so that people who are hard of hearing or deaf can fully participate and learn from these panels as well.
I recently read about, it was a legal case where it involved an elderly person who was also disabled, and their, lifetime of savings was put into a special trust under a lawyer.
Right.
And then the lawyer was accused of emptying, it was over $1.2 million over about a 2-month period.
Right.
And luckily, somebody in the family called it, and they turned it in to detectives, and it went before the courts. But the first thing the judge was asking was, how did this happen? Where is this $1.2 million?
Right. Well, and that's a great example of the two different principles. One is that it was the person that was trusted who had access, right? A lawyer. But also with elder abuse, another really important, and really with all forms of violence, but particularly with elder abuse, isolation is a major issue, right? So one thing that I'm always telling my students, and I remind people on the panel, is like, call your grandparents, know what's going on in their lives, stay connected with them. It's so easy for older adults to get isolated, which makes them easy targets and makes it easy for these kinds of violence to go undetected for long periods of time. But we know elders who are really well connected are less likely to fall for scams, especially if they have people kind of like coaching them for what to look for, or like warning them, hey, this looks really suspicious, or they're more likely to catch it early because they're not dealing with it by themselves. They're also really afraid of admitting that they've been taken advantage of and their independence being taken away, which is another reason that elder abuse goes underreported.
The scariest and the saddest thing about all of these different categories is the fact that it's usually somebody close to or tied to the family in some way.
Yeah, I think that adds to, it's always painful. There's physical pain, there's financial pain, but then there's this added layer of emotional pain that happens, and feeling so much like the people that I was supposed to be my ride or die, right? The people who were supposed to care for me, to look after me, they have left me hung up to dry, right? And which is why it's so important for us to continue to have close relationships with older adults in our lives, to make sure that we're believing people when they report instances of violence and abuse to us, because one layer of hurt that a lot of people experience, especially in terms of sexual assault, is that they've been violated by someone close to them. And if that person has a really strong, a positive reputation in the community, a lot of people are just like, I just don't believe you. I just don't believe you. And so once again, they're left isolated and unsupported. So one of the things we can do is we can believe survivors, give them the benefit of the doubt, and then work with them to navigate some of the processes and the legal processes and the support processes that are available to them before we just shut them out.
And again, Rebecca Oldham with us this morning from MTSU, and this event comes up starting March 26th and goes on until what date?
April 16th. And I wanted to also let the community know that on the March 26th date, that's child abuse. They can learn more about this by going to mtsu.edu/HDFS for Human Development and Family Science. There's a flyer there with info about the panelists, with a registration code. You can register if you want. That's where you can get the Zoom link. And then later that night on the March 26th date, the Dean of the College of Ed is also having a professional panel about childhood trauma, which will be a really apt follow-up. So they can come to my panel, enjoy the food that we'll be providing afterward, and then just hang around just for a little bit to go to that event for the College of Education.
When you look at things like childhood trauma, caused by sexual abuse or caused by a child growing up in a household filled with domestic violence,
right?
The outcome on their life is devastating. I mean, it can literally rewire the brain of a child.
Yeah, that's right. So there's a lot of really interesting research. It's called epigenetics, and it's about how different experiences we have in life can turn on and off different genetics that we have. And it can leave very long lasting, very physiological effects on how our body responds to stress. One way that we can mitigate some of those issues is having important support systems in times of stress. It's really when children go through stress without any kind of support system that we see a lot of those effects of toxic stress later on down the road. There's a lot of really interesting research about something called ACEs, adverse childhood experiences, and how just having a few of those can have really profound effects on your physical health, on your mental health, on your emotional health for a lifetime. But positive childhood experiences, and there's a list of those, can also mitigate some of the harmful effects of the toxic stress of those adverse childhood experiences. Things like experiencing a divorce in the family, things like having trauma and abuse, neglect. In fact, neglect is a lot more common than physical abuse. It's much more common.
And when you look at all these different problems involving, any type of abuse, really, I know sometimes those around them, friends, family, they don't learn about what actually happened until years later. And then that's the other side of the problem, is that it's not reported until, 5, 10, even 30 years down the road.
Right. And so that's just years and years of accumulated isolation, accumulated mental health issues, dysfunctional habits. We think about how people are more likely to develop addictions to kind of help deal with some of that trauma and all of the negative fallout that can come from that, which if we had prevented it, right? We say an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, right? So these panels can do a lot of heavy lifting to try and prevent some of those things and intervene sooner. Early intervention can make a huge difference in the long-term outcomes for those survivors.
I know there's a lot of studies done that talk about how this huge percentage of the homeless population in general, they either suffer from some type of mental instability or they went through some type of trauma as a child, and that ultimately led them to where they are today. And that's scary. I mean, when you look at the real effects on the human brain, that's what it looks like sometimes.
Yeah, I do think it allows us to have a little bit more empathy for some of the dysfunctional patterns that we see in our friends and our family members, not to make excuses for them, but to understand them and then to respond in a way that is constructive rather than dismissive. Like, oh, you just have a problem.
Yeah.
You just need to get yourself together. When if we understood more and we intervened with evidence-based practice, we could have prevented it, or we can actually address the root of the problem rather than just saying, you gotta just get your life together.
So one of the things that will be discussed, I'm sure, at these upcoming events is the problem with just getting over something. You don't just get over the problem of child sex abuse or domestic violence or elder abuse. You don't just get over these things.
Yeah. No, I mean, we will have on our intimate partner violence panel, we're going to have Kat Pulcinelli. She's a survivor of domestic violence. And last year was her first year on the panel, and our audience really connected with her story. And she has a podcast where she talks about resilience and moving past some of the things that have happened to you in the in terms of trauma, or it doesn't just have to be domestic violence. And so that's a lot of what I think Kat is going to share with us, not just how to support survivors in those situations, but also how survivors can make sense of what happened to them and then find their strength again. So
on the flip side of some of these big issues is the fact that there's a lot of survivors who come out of it and they end up helping others.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, I teach a class on this, and I use what's called trauma-informed pedagogy. And one of the ideas behind this is that you create a space where people can kind of navigate learning about this material, talking about this material based on their unique responses to it. So for some survivors, they find it incredibly empowering to say, like, this happened to me. I was sexually assaulted. I was the victim of child abuse. I'm a survivor of domestic violence or elder abuse. And I find power in telling others about that so that they can make decisions, so we can work toward prevention. But then other people, a completely legitimate response also is to say that this is my story and it's not anybody else's, right? Yeah. So it completely depends on the person, and there's no wrong way to do it, just the one that makes sense for you.
And again, the first event, that is the Child Abuse Focus, and that's March 26th. And then the second panel discussion, April the 9th, and that one is about intimate partner violence. And then the third, elder abuse, and that's going to be April 16th.
That's right. And so the panels will be at 1:15. They'll go into 2:40. And at 2:45, we will convene for a networking reception in the atrium of the academic classroom building on MTSU's campus. Like I said, these are virtual or in person, so you can get the Zoom link by completing the registration. If you want, it will send you reminder emails. And if you're there in person, you can join us for a catered networking reception afterward to get to know our panelists, to ask them questions, or meet other people who are at the event.
And again, in closing, if you want to learn more about this, I know you mentioned the website, but if you forget that because it's kind of long,
yeah, it is.
just Google or try Googling family violence panels on MTSU's campus. Maybe type in March 26. It should pull it up.
Yeah, or HDFS. It's on our webpage.
Sounds good.
Yeah,
again, with us this morning, Rebecca Oldham, Assistant Professor in the Human Development and Family Science Program within MTSU's Human Sciences Department. Thank you again for joining us.
Thanks so much, Scott. Have a great day.
You too.
This message brought to you by the Central Tennessee Regional Solid Waste Planning Board. Visit RecycleRightTN.com for tips, ideas, and locations on where to recycle near you.
Don't be trashy, recycle classy, recycle right, Tennessee.
Recycling isn't just about tossing materials in a bin, it's about knowing which materials are accepted. Go to RecycleRightTN.com.
Recycle right, Tennessee.
This is Peter Demas. Come eat with us at Demas's restaurant. A lot of times when you get steamed vegetables such as broccoli or cauliflower, it's either soggy. One of the things that we wanted to do was make certain that it was still soft, but still had a little bit of a crunch to it. And so we worked on the procedure of how to cook that. And then all of our vegetables are seasoned with our seasoned salt. We keep that seasoned salt at home, and I can tell you almost all the vegetables I cook at home have the seasoned salt on it. Come eat with us at Demas's restaurant on Northwest Broad Street.